Hey, what's going on? Realistic Randy, Mediocre at Best podcast. Thanks for watching and listening. However it is you're supporting this show, we definitely appreciate it. My producer, Aaron, out in San Diego, big shout out to him out in Blue Vision Entertainment. Putting these videos together for us. We're tweaking things a little bit here. Want to be able to kind of control the sound, at least this end, so I can hear it, make it flow a little bit better. So anyway, we definitely appreciate the support up until this point. And we certainly hope you continue to support this show. So, going jam-packed podcast this week. A lot to talk about, mostly NBA stuff, but we're going to start with some NFL stuff, mostly Vikings. But before I start with the Minnesota Vikings, because the NFL schedule has been released, and I've been saying a couple of weeks ago that I don't see this team making the playoffs, right? I don't really see them making the playoffs. I think they'll go 8-8 or 7-9, so we'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, some things, I really don't care to really talk about, or not care to talk about, but I may not necessarily want to talk about. But hey, if I'm going to do this, then I might as well do this. Aaron Hernandez, going to talk about this real quick. Aaron Hernandez, it was ruled that he did commit suicide and take his own life, hanging himself in his prison cell. And basically there's the discussion of, do you feel sorry for him or empathy or sympathy, what have you. And quite honestly, just to be blunt, I don't have any sympathy or any empathy towards Aaron Hernandez. This is a guy who had everything going for him, in which he just signed, what was it, a $40 million contract extension with the New England Patriots. And we're talking about a guy that's had documented, criminal or violent past going back to the University of Florida with the Gators. So, and I know the show that Tiki Barber does, I don't know the name of his podcast that he does with his co-host, but he posted out on Twitter saying, well, now that Aaron Hernandez, his brain will be scanned for CTE, will that change anything as far as if it comes back that he does have CTE? My response is, well, this is a guy that has had a documented past going back to the University of Florida. This is clearly a guy that had issues extending far beyond just blows to the head. I mean, we've had plenty of football players that when they've come and gone, because you can't scan for CTE until after they've passed, plenty of players have come back, testing positive for CTE that hasn't taken other people's lives. So I don't, it's not going to change my opinion if it comes back that he has CTE or not. And, people's, basically I don't feel bad for him. This is a guy who had it all and could not leave his troubled past behind him. He had to keep it going, and it's just unfortunate, but it is what it is. I don't have any sympathy for Aaron Hernandez. So moving forward to the Minnesota Vikings now, I see that they're starting, it looks like a Monday night game. The last time, I believe it wasn't last year they did Monday night. I believe they started Sunday Night Football last year, or maybe it was Monday night. But I remember the year before that when they played the San Francisco 49ers out in Santa Clara. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to be amazing. And they showed up, and they laid an absolute dud of an egg. So they're going against the New Orleans Saints this year to start off the season. Monday Night Football, September 11th, 6:10 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'm out on the West Coast, so it'll be a little bit earlier than that. But I hope they beat the Saints at least. I don't see this team going beyond an 8-8 record, maybe 9-7 tops. But I hope they beat the Saints. I can't stand the Saints. We can sit here and talk about, the Saints and they're great and Drew Brees and they got the Super Bowl and everything like that. I don't care what anybody says. 2009 NFC Championship game, they cheated. They cheated. And I didn't need Bountygate to come out or the reports to be revealed was a couple of months later or maybe a year later saying, they had, bounty hits for Brett Favre and everything. I didn't need that information. If you watch the game, whether you're a Vikings fan or not, this was in the middle of the era, this new era of football where if you accidentally bump into the quarterback, rushing the quarterback, that's an automatic 15-yard penalty. They did that for Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. And my thing was, okay, this must be, consistent across the board for all quarterbacks. Well, they didn't do that with Brett Favre. Brett Favre was getting destroyed out there. We're talking about long after he released the ball on throws, Jonathan Vilma and all these other players, long after he throw the ball, they would smash Brett Favre basically in the mouth. Basically all these players, and the refs were there. They would see it, and they would say, well, I guess that's just too bad. They cheated. They got their Super Bowl. It is what it is. So I don't care. I hope I'm glad that they've been struggling. You can call me a hater all you want. They cheated, but it is what it is. So they'll probably win that. Steelers, Buccaneers, Lions to start off weeks 2 through 4. I think they're going to finish 2-2. And then the rest of these games, how the hell are they playing the Chicago Bears in a primetime game, Monday Night Football, October 9th, Chicago Bears at Soldier Field where they play? I don't understand what you just had a season last year. If you're the NFL, where you suffered a lot of, or not a lot of controversy, a lot of criticism from the fans, including myself, where it's just like, wait a minute. I remember Monday night games used to be games where it's like, okay, I need to sit down. I'm going to stop what I'm doing, and I'm going to just watch some football. This is going to be great. But the last year especially, and well, we always knew Thursday night football was pretty bad the last couple of years. But now Monday night football isn't necessarily much must-watch TV, and you're starting it with Chicago Bears playing the Minnesota Vikings. Well, you're not starting it, but that's one of the Monday night games. That's ridiculous. This whole idea that every team deserves a primetime game is absolutely ridiculous. I'm sorry. If I have to choose between, going to play chess or learning how to, master a skill as something else, or I'm going to watch the Jacksonville Jaguars, I will go watch the grass grow out in my backyard. Sorry, not sorry. But I don't see this team going beyond 8-8, maybe 9-7 tops because of a couple of reasons. There's a couple of the sense of urgency with the Minnesota Vikings specifically is just not there. I've been saying this the last couple of weeks, the last couple of podcasts, where my whole thing was I don't understand. There's two sides to Rick Spielman. There's Rick Spielman where it's like, what the hell with this? I'm going to make whatever moves are necessary. Then there's Rick Spielman who tries to get cute with a couple of things that do, kind of go unorthodox a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with going outside the box, but he does it to, I guess, try to prove a point. Last year in particular, right, Teddy Bridgewater went down with that horrific leg injury. We don't know if he's going to even come back or if he's going to have an NFL playing career after this when he does get fully healthy. But right after Teddy Bridgewater went down, what did he do? He went out and got Sam Bradford immediately. That's what a GM does, especially when you have a team that's ready, who you thought was ready, and I was one of those people. And let me stop real quick. I'm not this negative dude. I'm not here just my whole idea or formula behind these podcasts is just to be negative and Mr. Grumpy or Grinch or whatever it is. I'm realistic Randy for a reason. I see things as for what it is. I'm not going to get on here and say, yeah, I'm a Vikings fan and hell yeah, we're going to sit there. We're going to prove the world wrong and we're going to go to the Super Bowl at US Bank Stadium this year and be the first team to ever win a Super Bowl at their home stadium. That's not what I'm going to do. I'm looking at this for what it is because we have a couple of holes. And going back to Rick Spielman, after Matt Khalil went down, right, so he got Sam Bradford after Teddy Bridgewater went down. Matt Khalil, who I've been critical of since day one, well, not day one, but day one of season 2 for Matt Khalil with the Minnesota Vikings, he went down. And what did he do? He went out and got Jake Long, right, to replace him. That's the thing. He kept on top of it, saying, to hell with this. I'm going to do what's necessary. He had that sense of urgency to fill the holes needed right away to give this team a chance. Then you fast forward to this year, and we know what the deal is. The offensive line is still a project, to say at the very least. We were one of the worst in the NFL. I've been saying this time and time again. But there doesn't seem to be any sense of urgency. What did you do? You got Riley Reif, who I'm cool with, to replace Matt Khalil. You got another dude, Mike Remmers, who's statistically slightly better than TJ Clemens. And that's it. My thing is get as many offensive linemen as you can because right now it doesn't matter. You can sign up to 93 players or whatever it is, and then you start cutting people as the season draws closer, within training camp. Why don't you get offensive linemen to at least make some competition so that way you can find the best? You sign 2 offensive linemen, and that's it. My thing is at least sign other offensive linemen, if nothing else, for depth. So in case someone does get hurt, you have someone, maybe that's gone through competition through training camp, and you can go from there. But Rick Spielman just hasn't done that. Another thing we're missing is the slot cornerback, Captain Munnerlyn. People like to say, oh, Captain Munnerlyn, he's not that big of a loss. Before we had Captain Munnerlyn and that space between Captain Munnerlyn and Antoine Winfield, our slot cornerback was basically Josh Robinson and other plug-in guys that we try to plug in. And it just hasn't worked out in this era of football where slot receivers are, kicking ass a lot more, or not more, but almost as equally as the outside wide receivers. That slot corner is important. And right now, I don't know who that's going to be. Is it going to be Terrence Newman? I don't want it to be Terrence Newman. I mean, he's a good outside corner, but is he really going to be good enough to go into the slot? Is it going to be Trey Waynes? I don't know if that's going to be the case. Is it going to be Mackenzie Alexander, who everyone was all hyping up last year, but he didn't have – he didn't make an impression last year. He didn't get much playing time last year. So that only goes to show what the coaches may think about him. There's a lot of Sharif Floyd. Is he ever going to be healthy again? Is Linval Joseph basically going to be the one guy at the defensive tackle spot that shows up? There's been no sense of urgency with the Minnesota Vikings. Now, we know Harrison Smith, Xavier Rhodes, Everson Griffin, they're going to kick ass. Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks, I like them a lot. Their defense is going to be really good. But this window that we have to win now is right there, and it seems like there's been no sense of urgency shown by Rick Spielman. And I think after this year, because I see them going 7-9, 8-8, 9-7 tops, after this year, if they do finish around that record, especially after going to the playoffs a couple of years ago with Teddy Bridgewater, I think Rick Spielman gets fired. I think you have to start looking at him and saying, okay, you've done some great things, but you haven't done enough. The reason, here's the thing. I am no way going back or recanting my praise of Rick Spielman. If you go back to the earlier days of this podcast, especially the beginning of last year when they started 5-0, I was saying Rick Spielman should be executive of the year because of the sense of urgency he showed by getting Sam Bradford right away. I'm okay with Sam Bradford. We don't have a first-round pick because, in my eyes, our first-round pick this year is Sam Bradford, and I'm okay with that. But the problem that I do have with Sam Bradford, and not necessarily Sam Bradford per se, but having Sam Bradford as quarterback is because if you had Teddy Bridgewater opposed to Sam Bradford with this project of an offensive line, I would probably be a lot more lenient to say, okay, maybe they'll get 10, maybe even 11 wins, because the thing with Teddy Bridgewater is mobile in the pocket. He can move around, and as a last resort, if necessary, he can take off and scramble for a couple of yards, maybe even a first down. He's not looking to run first like RG3 or all these other quarterbacks that have come and gone, Colin Kaepernick, where they go off and they're trying to use their legs and maybe they can throw or not. Teddy Bridgewater can stand in the pocket, and he can take some hits too. It was a miracle that he lasted that 2015 season when he was just getting destroyed, especially by Matt Khalil, and leading up to that playoff game against the Seattle Seahawks where Blair Walsh missed the layup of a kick, but we're not going to revisit that. But my thing is, if you have a project of an offensive line, Teddy Bridgewater can move around in the pocket, extend plays, roll out, and, find dudes to get them open. The problem is you can't have a project offensive line with Sam Bradford as the quarterback because he basically is a statue back there where he sits there and he's like, you know what, I'm going to, just basically find somebody open without making any movement. So he's basically a sitting duck back there. And if you got a dude that's slightly better than TJ Clemmings, we saw what TJ Clemmings was all about. If you get a dude, Mike Remmers, who's statistically slightly better than TJ Clemmings, you're not really doing anything. So I don't know what the deal is with this. The Minnesota Vikings, it's a shame. We had a lot of hype coming in a couple of years ago when we first started this, the U.S. Bank Stadium. It was like, oh, okay, we got this team coming in. Basically we're going to have fans coming. I'm done. I went to the Vikings Stadium last year. It's a beautiful stadium, but I'm done. The Minnesota Vikings don't deserve my money until they show a sense of urgency, until they do. Because I'm done going to Minneapolis and going for Mall of America and the ambiance and, oh, this is great, this is fantastic. No. If I'm going to go and spend flight and hotel tickets and beer and merchandise at the stadium and everything, I want to go because you have a chance to do something. Not necessarily you're a shoo-in to win the Super Bowl, but at least be competitive. I don't think the Minnesota Vikings are going to be competitive this year, but it is what it is. If I've lost my mind, send us a tweet at realistic_Randy. What we're going to do, actually, coming up next, we're going to talk NBA playoffs. This has been fantastic. The first round series has been fantastic so far. Much more better than I thought it would be. Upcoming Mediocre at Best podcast with Realistic Randy. We kicking back, let's all just say it's gonna be a good day. We've been grinding, not caring what the time is. When I'm in my town, I'm only chilling with the finest. I've been out here trying to kick it for a minute, but I'm on